why don't we move from the politician to Joker?
He doesn't have any politics.
No politics with this guy. Um, so there's a lot to get into with Joker, and it's kind of hard to pick the right place to start. We've been hyped for this movie for a while now, at least from the beginning of the year.
Ever since that first trailer.
Yeah, and you know, when it was announced Todd Phillips was doing this, and that Phoenix was the choice. I mean, I think originally DiCaprio was theorized or rumored to be wanted for the role, and then ended up being Phoenix. I think we expected that this movie was going to be dark, and that this was going to be a real look at a very messed up person, fictional person, obviously, but a messed up person. And I think they made the right choice, because if there's one place to start with a positive with this movie, and there's a lot to talk about. It's an amazing film, I think, and just looks great. Gripping story. Phoenix's performance to me is the story. And there's obviously the political and social aspects that we'll get into, but I wanted to start. Do you feel like Phoenix in this role is the best performance of his career?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. It's a very showy performance from Joaquin, which you feel like is almost easy for him. An actor that can really communicate damn near anything, as we've seen in his career. And it was funny, as you're saying, Joaquin signing on for this role was kind of the early flag that this movie Joker is different than everything before. Because remember, Joaquin turned down Doctor Strange. He was not interested in the studio system, the franchisation of things, which is probably why you can write off any kind of sequel. If there is any kind of sequel, Joaquin ain't coming.
Right.
But having, and again, like the weird combo of him and Todd Phillips was always like, oh, Todd Phillips of all people got Joaquin to do something comic related. Fascinating. And we'll get into Todd Phillips more. But yeah, I'm trying to think of my favorite roles just off the rip. I think The Master is probably his best role. He's never won any of his Oscars, right? He didn't win for Walk the Line. He's been nominated a few times, didn't win for The Master. I always really liked Commodus in Gladiator, supporting role.
Such a little bitch.
Yeah, for sure. Great thumbs down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he has so much to do. He carries every scene, so in terms of like the gravity of performance carrying a movie, yeah, this might be it.
Yeah, it's probably between that and The Master for me. I also really liked his performance in Her, but it's such a subdued performance.
Right.
And in a sense, I feel like the Joker is kind of like, talking about Ryan Murphy mashing all of his shows together for The Politician. It's kind of like he took his character from You Were Never Really There, and then Her, and also The Master, and just kind of like mashed them all together to make this sad, crazy, dangerous person. And it's interesting to think about the Joker in this way, because the last time we saw the Joker in a movie, it was Jared Leto. And
oh yeah.
very, very famously, that has been panned by a lot of people. Some people really liked the role, right? But it was almost too in your face, and especially after
I liked some of his choices, but yeah.
Well, and especially after Ledger, who won the Academy Award for his performance, obviously posthumously, but it was such a subtle performance, and you knew very little about the Joker, and that's what made it so intriguing and that character so gripping. Is everything he did, you didn't know really what his motivations are. There really weren't any. He laid that out there.
Agent of Chaos.
Right, and he would tell these stories, and in those moments, it was like, you don't know what is actually going on with this person. That's what makes them so terrifying. This is a look at the Joker where it pretty clearly explains how this villain came to be, and it's a very empathetic look at the character, which is interesting, because
some people are not a fan of.
Right, and that's I think where we can kind of get into the social commentary. But I thought the movie as a whole is really, really good. It's probably in my top 10, maybe even top 5 for the year, because there were maybe one or two moments where I felt like it slowed a little bit, and I was like, where's this gonna pick back up? But the first 30-40 minutes I thought were absolutely awesome, and not even a comic book movie, just like a Taxi Driver-esque look at the 1980s and the
Yeah.
issues kind of going on in New York City, obviously portrayed in Gotham. And then the third act was just absolutely edge of my seat. Like, couldn't believe what I was watching. I thought it
Right.
was that good. How did you feel about the movie in general before we get into the bigger picture stuff?
Yeah. So I also really, really liked the movie. It's a fascinating movie to talk about for so many reasons, which I think really helps its case. But it's super compelling and it looks great. The performance is awesome. And I think what really stood out to me early on is, Todd Phillips, who we'll get to, coming from a comedy career, but I mean, Lawrence Shear's cinematography is just very reminiscent of what's influenced by this movie. Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, early Scorsese. And Max Friedberg's production design, who he worked on Beale Street, is superb. This just looks like late 70s New York City. Yeah. It looks incredible, And when we knew going in that this is going to be like a King of Comedy take, we've heard the director bullshit before. Winter Soldier is parallax view and all that bullshit that we hear about franchise movies. This is like really the first time where one of these IP driven movies is really actually inspired by Hall of Fame cinema of the past, to use a Scorsese term. And I think that just really, really stands out. It's really funny. And one of those drone shots of the train, I'm like, oh, well, that's just the Bronx. That's cool. Right. It looks so much like New York. I know anyone who's been in New York City recognizes those kind of overhead, above ground subway platforms that some of the scenes are on. But every scene in a room is so immaculate. Like the clown locker room and Flex house, his mom's house, whatever. Everything is just so detailed, and you just don't kind of get that anything traditional. And I think the reason I like the movie so much is it could exist without any of the Batman universe trappings. This doesn't have to be a guy called Joker. Thomas Wayne could be someone else. Bruce Wayne didn't have to be in this. Obviously, the scene with the Waynes getting murdered, the classic crime alley scene, that didn't have to be in this movie at all. The movie completely still works. And that's fascinating to me. And maybe that's the future where directors see this is their way to actually make stuff at scale, is by dressing it up in clown paint or whatever it may be down the line. Now, what that means for movies, I don't think you should hold that against Joker. The movie itself, just on its own, is really strong and really compelling. And it's not the most comfortable watch, that's for sure. No. It's a pretty blatant look at a guy with some serious mental illness. It's a sick man, and eventually starts doing some very depraved shit. So it's not fun, but it's really great.
Yeah, and I think where Phoenix really shines in this is, I mean, obviously he carries each scene dialogue wise, but what he does with his physical presence on the screen is, I mean, just from the get-go, the first shot is him obviously very depressed and down and using his fingers to rip his mouth into a smile, and there's a tear coming down, and it's just like this whole, it really sets the tone for the movie right off the bat. And then you have a lot of shots where he's shirtless and either dancing or
lost 50 pounds.
Yeah, and looking like Christian Bale from the Machinist in this movie. And the way that Todd Phillips shoots him from the top down on his back, and the way his muscles are moving, and his rib cage sticks out, it's very creepy. And the way he dances, especially after that first killing scene, which I thought was one of the most interestingly shot and lighted scenes I can remember. The way it would go through the tunnels at certain points, and the lights would flicker on and off, and then you'd see him shoot. It was almost like watching an old film, really. It was just fascinating. And that dancing scene in the stall or in the bathroom afterwards, really, I think, highlights that character shift and does it so beautifulully. And the way he just moves his body, it's it's creepy, but at the same time mesmerizing. And I think that portrays a lot of what Phoenix did with this character so well. What were some scenes or specific moments from the movie that really stood out to you?
Yeah, definitely the finance bros deaths on the
Yeah.
subway, as you just said. Um, Everything at Murray's show in Act 3, of
Mm-hmm.
course. I mean, at that point, the tension is really high, but I think that looked good and that really worked well. And, there's not a whole lot of violence in the movie, but when you do get it, this rapid ultra violence, it's really striking. I mean, everything at the end, I think, once Flex kind of realizing what he's accomplished,
Mm-hmm.
I like the whole chase scene at the end with Bill Camp and Shea Wiggum, the detectives chasing him down
Yeah.
and then getting like stopped by the mob in the subway. Again, not a enjoyable thing to see, but still good. Let's see. I'm trying to think this because everything in the movie is very atmospheric and nothing really feels like it's like wasted scenes, wasted material. Everything's kind of serving the purpose. I think if you wanted to be more critical, maybe we could have gotten in the head of Fleck a little bit more.
That's
Fleck,
tough.
it is, but the thing is, like Fleck, as he says to Murray, he doesn't like have any like really views, or at least he doesn't think he does until he starts, ranting at the end. But we never really see him express any kind of anything really. He doesn't really make any observations about the world or his circumstance until we start seeing him just kind of lash out. But I mean, I like Brian Tyree Henry. He's so good that having him do something subtle at Arkham like that, awesome. Also the Thomas Wayne scene at the the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were kind of setting that up to be super obvious about him being the one who kills Batman's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jack Nicholson in Tim Burton's Batman, but they fake you out with that, just like they fake you out with Fleck's mom not actually having an affair with Thomas Wayne and actually being kind of the cause of all of Fleck's misfortune. I really like those fake outs. I thought they were pretty subtle and also good red herrings at the end. And like, again, we didn't need all this Batman stuff, but I think the way they weaved in the Waynes was pretty effective.
Yeah, talking about the storytelling, I think that's where Phillips, who like I thought was masterful with this movie, really impressed me the most because in the first half of the movie, he builds up who you think this character is, and the second half is basically just tearing each pillar of this person's reality slowly. Taking away his medication and his mental health support, taking away his identity, his relationships with his family. The only stable things he felt like he had that he could really lean on and believe in are all a lie to him. And then it kind of culminates with the scene where he's in Zazie Beetz' apartment.
Yeah.
And you realize that she's like, you're in the wrong apartment, that they hadn't had this ongoing relationship he had fantasized about, which there were signs that probably wasn't real anyway, or it seemed odd that they would have this connection. But man, that whole turn, and then leading to him murdering obviously the guy who gave him the gun in the clown locker room. And
Glenn
that whole
Fleischer.
thing. Yeah, just and the supporting cast, just real quick, just the people you've mentioned: Glenn Fleischer, Zazie Beetz, Bill Camp, Shea Wiggum, Brian Tyree Henry, just
Mark Maron.
Yeah, could you have like a better? I mean, and fucking Robert De Niro. Like, what a goddamn supporting cast. Yeah, man. There's so much about this movie I thought was great. It's definitely one of the best of the year in my opinion. Interestingly, it has like a 70% Rotten Tomato score, 92% audience score. So a big difference between I think where critics are putting it and saying it's a. I think that a lot of where the negative criticism has come from is around the social aspects of the movie. Did you have a security guard in your theater?
Nope. I went at 4:00 though on Thursday, the earliest showings they had. So maybe later, who knows?
I went Friday at 7, and there was a security guard patrolling my theater, which wasn't totally full, but it was off-putting. And I think that there's a lot of fear and hysteria around what this movie could be doing. Well, what are your takes on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the thing with the critical reception was coming out of Venice, 6 weeks ago, where this won the Golden Lion, the top prize at Venice. Critical reception was very, very positive. And then once it was shown again at TIFF at Toronto, that's where a lot of the negative takes started to come through. I think a lot of people, maybe a lot of fans, I don't know, were expressing thoughts that this movie just was in the pre-release cycle too long.
Mm.
And there's the reception, the backlash to the backlash. Phillips certainly lashed out himself. A lot of things being said. I mean, heck, people are running with Joaquin snapping at a guy behind the scenes as like him being a diva, and it's like, I think, what's our blog on that? Method acting is messy sometimes. Like end blog, like we're good, okay, relax. But yeah, we just talked about The Hunt like a month ago, the Universal movie that was completely shelved for political reasons, and Universal just kind of backing off.
Yeah.
Art, video games, movies, music, whatever it is, there's no tangible link to it directly causing violence, crime, or anything, right? So why are you treating Joker any differently? I just don't understand why people are taking it one way this time and not the other times. Now you understand why, of course, because Joker, Fleck in this movie, is a pretty obvious analog for the contemporary helpless white male rage that you see in incel communities, red pill communities, all
Right.
that. It's obvious, and I think a lot of people may be a little dissatisfied or off put by this movie and Phillips is because Joker at the end and this movie on its own doesn't really have a point of view. You have, I think all this really wraps up in Act 3. You have Joker on the couch talking to Murray, and the old woman next to him says like, "Oh, you can't say that," when he says a really off-color thing that he thought was funny. I believe it was about murdering the fibros, right?
No, it was the joke was knock knock, who's there? Like
Suicide?
no, it was a drunk driver. Like, your son died in a drunk driving accident last night or something like that.
Right. Yes. There you go. And all right, I was like, okay, that's a very obvious point at comedy and telling people what they can and can't say in the current climate. Okay, Phillips comes from a comedy background. I guess that was logical. Then right after that, you have the whole thing about people not knowing, I think it was from Murray, not knowing how to talk to each other anymore, and how most people aren't animals, and it's like, okay, there's the moderate point of view. Everyone, let's calm down. We can come together, bipartisan, right? Okay, another obvious thing. And then you have Joker, honestly, doing like some like hard left politics, right? About killing the rich and redistributing wealth and stuff, right? Obviously, it's very anarchistic at the end, but having a guy who represents the hard right people exposed to the hard left views, is there a point of view in there? I don't think there is, and it doesn't need to have one. But when it's so obviously analogous to a lot of contemporary controversial things that people don't like discussing, hot button issues, I understand people's reservations. But I think it's stupid to try and boil that down to blame the movie for perhaps inciting anything. Like, I know the FBI had put out some precautionary materials out there, but they said the whole time there wasn't any real credible threats going on. And like, I saw the term like clown cell going around. Like, I don't, that's not real.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's similar to the conversation that comes up around any sort of mass shooting, in the idea that media or video games in some way influence what people decide to do. And maybe there have been certain instances where people have mentioned how these things contributed to a perspective. There have been school shootings where there have been pictures of the people beforehand with their guns and clown makeup, things like that. So there's an understandable concern, but does that actually mean that this is going to enhance the likelihood that someone will go out and do one of these atrocities? No, it doesn't. And I think you summarized it well in that final scene. They're really exposing like the political ideology of this, and being that there's not one, but I think that everybody is so up in arms about everything all the time. It's like you
Hmm.
really can't hear anything anyone's saying. Um, however, I think that um, I think that the point that's driven home most to me in this is the idea that uh, people don't want to see things that make them feel uncomfortable at times. And we've talked about how art in some ways can be uh, still artful and also offensive, or it can just be offensive and for shock value.
Right.
Thinking back to a lot of the comedy specials we talked about recently on this pod, like Bill Burr or Aziz Ansari, and how those things are handled. And I think Phillips actually handles this fairly well in this, like you said, because he doesn't seem to pick a side. He seems to incite a lot of different trouble in ideologies right now, and he does it in a really artful way that I think doesn't really leave you feeling like he's trying to go one way or the other, but just to make you think about it. And in the end, anarchy is what wins out, and that's what the Joker as a character has always been: is just doing shit to fuck with Batman, or to
Hmm.
make other people feel uncomfortable, or to incite chaos. And
Right.
that's who the character is. So if you came in here thinking the Joker's going to have any other standpoint, I think
Right.
you were a little bit confused on what movie you were going into.
Right. And I think, oh, suddenly now the Joker, because it's a little more analogous to the current climate. Oh, now the Joker is going to inspire people. Like,
Right.
we can relax, I think.
Yeah.
Um, you
That
know,
final shot, by the way, of him
mhm.
like on top of the police car and all the
Yeah,
people around him
with
was
the
like,
grin, the blood grin.
that was some crazy like filmmaking right there. Amazing shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the right before that, the window shot. Very
Mm-hmm.
obvious homage to Heath
Yeah,
when he's
and
hanging out the cop car, and clicks back his hair in the wind. Awesome little callback there.
yeah.
Um,
And right
yeah,
before that, where he grabs the TV camera and is like talking right into it,
right,
kind of like in the Dark Knight when he's doing the handheld thing. So
right, of
I like
course.
that.
Yeah. So I mean, it begs the question now, like the future of this movie. We know we're recording this early in the weekend, so we don't have the official numbers yet, but it's expected to go anywhere from, I think, 80 to 95 million opening weekend, which, depending on where that lies, could be a record not only for September but also for October. Um, Obviously, that's very successful, very, very impressive too for an R-rated movie,
Mm-hmm.
super violent. That's wild. And DC, Warner Brothers certainly needed that after they had a string of flops throughout the summer before it too. Um, Now, the Golden Lion prize at Venice, and Joaquin also won the Venice Acting Prize. Does that proceed us to take us to any Oscar glory? Obviously, the movie's very controversial. So is Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit won the TIFF Audience Prize, and Joker was right behind it. The Golden Lion, the past 2 years, actually went to Best Picture nominated movies.
Roma, The Shape of Water.
Right. But before that, it hadn't been one since Brokeback Mountain back in 2005, speaking of Heath.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we can really write that as any kind of bellwether at all, given the controversy. I think the best bet is, I think production design's very deserving. Again, that's only 5 nom categories, so who knows if it gets through, but that would be awesome. But Joaquin is right there. Best actor, super, super deep with big names, tons of stars. So it's by no means a walk, but Joaquin also someone who has never won and is well liked by, I think, all kinds of communities. And I think that would be great to see. And it's funny, if he did win for Joker, Joker would go down alongside Vito Corleone as the only character to win twice by 2 different portrayals. Obviously, that was De Niro and Pacino. So who knows about that? I think it's way too early to tell. I'm curious to see what kind of cycle we have now with the movie out in the general public, and assumingly post no violence occurring due to the movie, shocking. What happens next? I
agree. I think the interesting thing becomes the best actor race. I couldn't see this movie winning Best Picture. I think
I'm just talking about a Best Picture nom. If we can even get that,
I could see it possibly getting a Best Picture nom. But Phoenix versus DiCaprio versus Driver for Marriage Story. Also crazy because Driver also has the the Guantanamo Bay cover-up film that
The Report.
the report that
Mhm.
I feel like he could also get some buzz
Right.
for. But yeah, it feels like it's going to be probably a 2 or 3 horse race for that. Probably some other big names getting nominated. But DiCaprio, and honestly, everything with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the further we get away, I feel like just has a better and better shot of cleaning up at the Oscars for what it was and being a Hollywood film. It just feels like it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, destined.
Also, Todd Phillips
Yeah.
directly going after woke culture and the left. Not the best move to engender goodwill for your movie, even if you believe those things. And there's some, if you have some legitimate gripes about the pre-coverage of your movie,
He ain't running.
not running, that's for sure.
It's too bad because
yeah.
I could see. I think he could be deserving of a nomination for Best Director, and to think that this was the guy that made Old School. I'm here for the gangbang, and then this is the same guy. Amazing story that he's come this far.
I mean, I just thought it was funny that it's like the reason I left comedy is because of the current climate and how you can tell jokes. I was like, no, bro, it's like you got to make a movie about the Joker, which was guaranteed money.
Yep.
That's why you did that. Also, no one saw War Dogs, and no one sees comedies in general. That's why you left. Anyone who watches movies knows the real reason. Like, to relax.
Alan Sepinwall had a great tweet thread where he was making different points about, or satirical points about how comedy is bad, and then would post a gif of different comedies right now that are getting critical acclaim and are excellent. So
if Alan Sepinwall's dunking on you, he's a pretty calm guy. That says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the Joker, or not even the Joker. Drop the just Joker. Any thoughts? Any last thoughts to wrap it up?
Like I said before, perhaps this movie is too indebted to Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. Its connections are very obvious. It is fascinating that we got something like this inside the loosely defined comic book standard, and I'd be curious to see if we can get anything. Logan and Deadpool paved the way in a certain extent to this point. Will we see this in the future? Because, Fox, they're not making anymore. They made 2 of these. DC, I think, is our best bet to see more of this kind of stuff, because when the hell you expect Marvel to upset the MCU? I mean, let's see if Blade is rated R first,
Right.
It's probably going to be a while before we get anything like this. So I have reservations about saying this changes superhero movies forever. It's certainly perhaps the least superhero movie that's in the genre to this point. I think that's pretty clear, but I don't think it predicts the future until we see more evidence of everyone being more invested in these kind of alternative takes on things that are just really window dressing for other movies.
If this absolutely crushes at the box office, do you think there's an opportunity or a chance that we'll see a Joker 2 or something where it's maybe Batman? Because it seemed like they left a little bit of it open when you see the Waynes get murdered.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, this movie could easily do Venom business, $800+ million. It's pretty. I think that's the kind of analog right now. Full release, rated R, all that. We're seeing the Batman with Matt Reeves, with Pattinson's portrayal of Batman, 2021, effectively next year. I don't know how you can, and Phillips for the whole time. So the reason I made a superior movie, so it wasn't connected to anything. And when people teased the connection between Pattinson's Batman and this Joker movie, Phillips turned that down, rejected that idea. So if they were to make a connection following the money, I assume Phillips is not there. I assume Joaquin is not being the Joker. Perhaps the Joker is a sphere in the background. Maybe you see him shadowy in Arkham. I don't know. But I think it's really stupid to have 2 different Batmans that close together, because that would imply that you're getting rid of Pattinson already, which is kind of the whole opposite of the whole point. We're so excited about him because he's such a good actor. So maybe that's what's cool. This movie successfully does tease that, and did successfully, if unnecessarily, weave in a Batman origin, a familiar one, but it is there. Maybe down the line, but I would say odds are no.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it, but man, If there was ever a chance to see Pattinson's Batman and Phoenix's Joker on the screen together, I mean, damn, that'd be some
Yeah.
crazy shit.
I mean, the other thing is you figured the Batman will be rated PG-13.
Right.
This was rated R, so a lot of hoops to jump through. Did you get the before your movie? Did you get the teaser to Christopher Nolan's Tenet
Yes.
with John David Washington?
I'm all in.
Yeah, I mean, we were all in ever since we knew Nolan was making a movie. We saw the cast. The trailer doesn't communicate you anything. It's a short teaser. I believe they first started showing this back with Hobbs and Shaw, I think it was, or something else in August. So I hadn't seen it until now. But it's really funny. I'm in my theater. There's a guy sitting in front of me, and right after the teaser ends, you know how for AMC theaters where we go, after the trailer ends, there's like a muted splash screen where it says the title again with the release date, and there's no noise. During that like 3 seconds, the guy down next stairs was like, "Oh, 70 millimeter. That's gonna be sick." And it was very audible, like normal volume. I died.
That's incredible.
Then he remarks to his friend, "It's like, we can't see that here, but that's awesome."
Those film fans, dog. I love it. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I'm all in on Tenet. Even the teaser, I was like, yes. And with the way it's shaped, where it's like the E is backwards, looks like it's going to be some either like time travel type stuff or something, going back and forth. Give me all the Christopher Nolan.